back in Nashville, great to be back in Music City, a wonderful part of our country, so pleased to be with you. Let me tell you about something though before I get really started. About 14 years ago, I created an organization at the request of our living presidents called America's Promise, the America's Promise Alliance. And what we have been doing for the last 14 years, mobilizing the country to get into the lives of our kids who are in need. Kids who need mentors, need safe places, need a healthy start in life, and they need the right kind of education for a 21st century world. And above all, kids who need to be shown the value of serving others, giving back to their communities and their fellow citizens. We've grown a lot. It's really, really taken off. And one of the programs we have had for the last few years is to identify the best communities in America for kids, those that are doing the best job for kids. And every year we designate those 100 communities. Nashville has won all 4 times. I'm telling you, you've got terrific programs out here. My wife now runs America's Promise, and she's so pleased that I'm out here and I can offer you my congratulations. I mean, you sometimes don't know what Nashville and what Tennessee has done. You're leading the country. You have gone from a 60% graduation rate to a 75% graduation rate in the last 10 years. And while we talk about the problems we're having in our economy, it begins with educating our kids. If we don't educate our kids, America ain't going nowhere. That's what we have to do. I'm also glad to be back because I used to be stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Okay, all right. Fort Campbell in the house? Want to know? I used to command the 2nd Brigade of the 101st Airborne Division. We got 2nd Brigade people here. Let me see all the Fort Campbell people. All right. Where's the 502nd Infantry? Anybody here from the 502nd? Where you go? Who? Now you know, I gave up command 35 years ago. Long time. But the tradition used to be in the old days that if you were in the 101st and you had a coin, that, you know, if you would have challenged me with the coin, then, and if I didn't have one, I'd have to buy you a drink. But if it was the other way around, you'd have to buy me a drink. But because it's been 35 years, I know you don't expect me to have a coin. The question is, do you have a coin? My brother? No? No excuse, sir. That's the answer. It's a great pleasure to be with you, but I have to be honest, I have to be very, very candid and honest with this distinguished crowd at this stage of my life, at this stage of my career. It's a great pleasure to be anywhere. Not easy. Even though I've been out of government for a few years, I still think about those days late at night. I still think about the fact that there were days when every president, every king, every prime minister was calling me. Come see us, please visit, can we come see you? I think about the fact that one day every television commentator, every print reporter wanted to interview me. They all wanted to hear what I had to say. I still think about the fact that one day you're sitting there and you're the most important diplomat in the whole free world. One day you're sitting there and you're the Secretary of State of the United States of America. The next day you ain't. You're just another guy. They pull the phones out, nobody calls you anymore. You have to go through a transition to get back to being a normal person. But I had gone through something like this once before in my life when I stepped down to being chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the #1 military position in the Armed Forces of the United States. And I knew I would go through the same kind of transformation when I left Secretary of State position. And I knew that the transformation begins at home. Transition begins at home. So the first morning after I left the Department of State, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my beloved wife of 49 years now. We're having a leisurely cup of coffee, and I was looked across the table at her lovingly and I said, darling, this is the first day of the rest of our lives. I won't be getting up at 5:30 in the morning anymore. I won't be leaving you at 6:30 in the morning anymore. She froze. And I could hear her mutter under her breath, my God, he's not leaving in the morning anymore. Doesn't he understand how we've stayed married for almost 4 years? I realized that was not going to be a sustainable situation. I had to get out of the house and do things. But the real problem is that there's an emptiness that comes upon you. There's an intellectual and emotional gap that opens up inside of you that can be very, very depressing if you don't fill it with something after being at such a height. So I gave it a lot of thought. What will I do? What will I do? How will I fill this emptiness I feel inside of me? And the answer was perfect. The answer came right to me. I bought a Corvette. It works. Is anybody here way over 70 years old having trouble? Get a Corvette, I'm telling you. Now, the police in Northern Virginia, not that happy with my Corvette. I have 5 police jurisdictions around me. They all know me. They radio each other. There he goes. We got him this time. I know he's speeding. Jason, get him. And so they'll chase me down George Washington Parkway right outside of McLean, Virginia, and pull me over. But they're all XGIs. So they'll walk up to the car, they'll come to attention and salute. And then they write me a ticket. Trained her too well. It's okay, now look, we're having fun with all this retirement stuff, but are you really retired or are you busy? What are you doing? And the answer is, I'm probably as busy now as I've ever been in my life, but a different kind of busy. I keep my fingers in on military matters and diplomacy and foreign affairs, as you would expect. But my life really, what I actually do, is quite different, other directions now. I have the privilege of going around the country, going around the world, and speaking to people. Wonderful audiences such as we have here. Sometimes it just might be 20 businessmen. But the reason I love it is that it takes me to all different parts of our country, and it allows me to see what's really going on in the country, and not just what I might see in Washington, D.C., or the East Coast or the West Coast. And what I see as I go around the country is people are concerned. You're worried about the economy. You're worried about our unemployment rate. You're worried about what's going on in other parts of the world affecting us and our troops, our beautiful, wonderful troops. All those things worry you, and they should. But what I really see, in addition to that, is that deep in your heart, you still have a belief in this country. You still have a level of confidence and optimism that we can take on anything, that we can beat any problem we have as long as we go at it. I get so pumped up by that I only wish when I go back to Washington I could bottle what I see out in the countryside and take it back to Washington and pour it over the heads of our politicians and tell them, you better get going. You better get going. I've been telling some of the Washington types recently, okay, you get mad about all these demonstrators down at Wall Street. It's kind of like the Arab Spring. They're coming your way, guys. You'd better fix this country. We're waiting for you to give us what we need to move forward in this 21st century world. Stop screwing around. Let's get going. Here's the problem. Our founding fathers created a system that was based on compromise. Fight strongly for what you believe in. Argue it. But at the end of the day, in order to move forward,